This video is aimed at showing you how you can improve as much as possible, even up to 3 to 6 points within the 2 weeks that you have left, just by doing the stuff that's in this video. This video is aimed to cover what exactly your study plan should look like over the next couple weeks, how much you should practice, what you should be practicing, as well as what strategies you want to focus on for each section and which ones you really don't want to focus on. One more thing before we get into the tips. If you're looking to get any free practice exams, such as the ones that we'll use in these videos, any free tutoring even with myself or one of the other experts at 5 Academy, there's a link down below in the description where you can create a free account on our website and get access to what I just mentioned. You can even use some of these things that I just mentioned before your test date, and we can help you figure out how exactly you should study leading up to the test. We provide free tutoring resources to every student for free, just to give everyone access to expert help like everyone should. So go ahead and schedule your free session. Link down below. Let's get started with tip number 1. First thing is you need to have the right amount of volume of practice exams before your test date is here. If you don't have the right amount of practice, you're not going to be familiar enough with the test. The general amount of volume that I recommend for every student leading up to test day is 8 to 12 full practice exams before test day. By no means should you be doing 8 to 12 tests in 2 weeks, but in general, that's the goal. Now, the reason I'm mentioning that is that we're going to take that and scale it down. So for you, given the amount of time that you have left, what you should be focusing on is not 8 to 12, but try to do 2 to 3 tests per week. So between now and your test date, you should be doing 4 to 6 tests. And you can break these down day by day. So you don't have to do one test one day, then a whole test another day, then a whole test another day, and then that's it for the week. You can break down those sections day to day. So do English, Math Wednesday, and then the reading science on Thursday, and then go back to English and maybe reading the next day, something like that. Whatever schedule works out for you, as long as you're getting in 2 to 3 tests per week. The benefits of practicing: A, you get familiar with the question types, B, you get to make mistakes on those question types, and then C, you get to learn from those mistakes by reviewing those questions, seeing what you did wrong, and at least taking away something from what you did wrong in regards to whether it's a particular skill or a particular timing method or strategy that you did or didn't implement correctly. This brings me to my second strategy that you should be following this week and the next week is every practice exam that you take from now on, as well as that you've taken in the past, you need to make sure that you review it not only once, but again and again and again. Those practice exams that you have taken and will continue to take have incorrect responses in them. And those responses are evidence of your weaknesses. You need to learn all those weaknesses because learning those weaknesses will bridge the gap between your score and a 36. So whatever those weaknesses are, you need to learn those. You need to understand why you're making those mistakes by microanalyzing each of them. I recommend that for each individual question you get wrong, you mark it up in whatever test booklet you're using, and you come back to it after each test that you take. So if you've taken 5 tests already and you take your 6th test, after that 6th test, review the mistakes of that 6th test, as well as the mistakes of all of those past 5 exams, again and again and again, just to almost to the point where you kind of know your mistakes by heart, because the skills repeat from exam to exam, and that'll help you answer those specific question types that are very common correctly on your practice test or on your test day. So again, remember, first strategy that we talked about, practice volume is key. Second strategy is that you need to make sure that you are reviewing your mistakes, because the skills on the exam and the question types, they repeat. And this is the best way for you to retain that information without actually learning it in a classroom environment, if you haven't learned it yet. All right, third strategy, and this is kind of going back to study plan. The third thing is that for that 2-week period that you have, that first week should be spent practicing everything, okay? So if you're doing 2 to 3 practice exams, you should be doing 2 to 3 English sections, 2 to 3 math, 2 to 3 reading, 2 to 3 science. This is because over this first week, you want to assess what exactly your weaknesses are. If you haven't already done that, even if you already know what weaker sections you have and what stronger sections you have, you still want to practice all of them just to develop repetitions and get better at all of them overall. But the week after, what I recommend you do is you focus in on just the 2 sections that you're the most weak in. So if after that first week you realize that your reading and science scores are your lower ones, just like what was the case for me, you should spend that entire second week, or almost 80% at least, just taking reading and science tests. So do 2 to 3 practice exams worth of reading and science. So that means literally do maybe 4 to 6 sections of reading, 4 to 6 sections of science repeatedly. And you can get more practice exams by buying more prep booklets or finding exams online, whatever the case may be. But the point is, you want to focus in on the sections that you're weakest in and really hone in on those strategies. Without further explanation, it's kind of intuitive why you do this. The more practice you get in your weaker sections, the more you'll improve. Last thing that I want to do in this video is give you some bonus information of if you were to focus on any of the sections on the ACT exam for this last week before your test day, what exactly would you go through and do for each of those sections to make sure you improve as much as possible. Every section on the exam is different, and every section has different approaches and methodologies for how you improve and do it as fast as possible. So the methodology is going to differ for each of these sections. So let's say you go through your first week of exams and you realize that English and math are your weakest sections. These two are the most similar out of all the sections of the ACT, and what you should be doing over that last week, if you choose English and math to be your two sections that you really want to work on, is that you should be obviously taking English and math tests, but the only thing you can do is focus on your timing strategy, which we have videos about. We recommend the 20-40 math strategy and the break it up evenly English strategy. And then the second thing is you want to just do the exercise of taking tests and reviewing your mistakes. I would even recommend you take notes on what mistakes you're making and try to categorize them. Our website can help you do this. We have some skill by skill categorization tools for your practice tests. But the idea is you need to keep learning from your mistakes. English and math are very skill heavy. If you don't know the skills, you're not going to do very well. If you learn the skills by reviewing your mistakes on practice tests, you'll do better. The next section is reading. So if you determine that reading is one of your weak sections that you want to focus on, the first thing you need to do is find a skimming or reading method that works for you. Most people are slow readers, including myself, naturally slow readers, not really an avid reader growing up. So comprehension is going to be a little tough, especially doing it very, very quickly. So what you need to do is you need to find a skimming method for getting through the passage as fast as possible that's actually going to work for you. We have a video that I'm not going to break it all down here because it's going to take too long and I want to keep this very short, but we have a video that I'll link perhaps in a card or somewhere down below in the description called 5 ACT reading skimming strategies. This goes through 5 different ways to read passages, and depending on what kind of reader you are, you might prefer one method over the other. They essentially just vary what parts of the passage you skim versus what you read in depth and how much. Okay, so depending on what your preferences are, you should pick one or two of these methods and experiment with them. Last week that you have before your test date, if you choose reading to be the section you want to focus on, is your time to experiment with strategies. That's the key with reading. Experiment with the skimming strategies I just told you about that I'll mention in another video. And also experiment with timing methods. We have another video about reading timing methods that I'll link as well. If you can get those two things down, skimming and timing, then you're essentially set for reading. The rest of it is just comprehension, basic understanding of a reading passage and answering questions. And lastly, it's the science section. So what should you focus on if you're choosing to hone in on your science skills in that last week of practice? If you're trying to focus in on that science section, first thing I recommend you do is you look for variables, relationships, and differences on all of your science passages, and you get in the habit of doing this. Science passages can be very intimidating, and it seems a lot of the time like they're giving you a bunch of information that might not be necessary. But really, each of these passages boils down to 3 things. So the variables, like, what are the inputs, what are the outputs, the different quantities that are being measured. So this could be time, volume, it could be distance, it could be meters, it could be length, it could be a rate like gallons per minute, or pressure, temperature, any sort of quantity. Take note of those quantities. Those are variables. Second thing is relationships. So how are those variables related? Are there any trends in the data? Do certain values increase or decrease together? And then the last thing is differences. So what are the differences between the different figures and graphs in the passages, or the different viewpoints in the passages? You need to learn to take note of these and practice doing that. We have videos where we break this down further. If you look up any of our science skimming videos, we should have some content about that I will try to link as well to give you further explanation. But you need to get in the habit of interpreting science passages very quickly because it'll give you more time to answer these questions. That's the first thing. The second thing is find a timing strategy that works for you. I recommend that you break it up evenly. So that's 35 minutes divided by 6 passages. That gives you about 6-ish, a little under 6 minutes per passage. Practice to that and see how well you do, and keep trying to get yourself to stick to that timing. The less time you spend reading the passage, the closer you'll get to 6 minutes per passage, okay? So that's basically it. I know I just gave you a lot, but the whole point of this video is for it to be as short as possible. I don't know how short this is, probably like 8-9 minutes at this point, but the shortest possible kind of cramming guide that gives you a bit of a study plan and an idea of what you should and should not do. As far as what you shouldn't do, kind of deviate from this plan, vocab, or don't read any textbooks, flashcards, or anything like that, unless you're doing flashcards for like questions that you missed. That could be helpful. The main way you're going to improve is by practice and by reviewing your mistakes. And if you need any help with that, if anything in this video didn't make sense, feel free to schedule a free tutoring session with me, and I'd love to help you out. So that's it for me. Best of luck on your exam, and we'll be back with another video in a week, I think, about the same topic. We're going to revisit it, provide some further explanation on what you should do in that last week. How to make the most of it. So we'll see you then. Bye. Really, what it just boils down to is you need to practice. Just practice. The main way you're going to improve is by practice and by reviewing your mistakes. period. That's it.